After those words, a wildness rose in the dragon again and drove it to attack, heaving up fire, hunting for enemies, the humans it loathed. Flames lapped the shield, charred it to the boss, and the body armor on the young warrior was useless to him. But Wiglaf did well under the wide rim. Beowulf shared with him once his own had shattered in sparks and ashes. Inspired again by the thought of glory, the war king threw his whole strength behind a sword stroke and connected with the skull. And Nagling snapped. Beowulf's ancient iron-gray sword let him down in the fight. It was never his fortune to be helped in battle by the cutting edge of weapons made of iron. When he wielded a sword, no matter how blooded and hard-edged the blade, his hand was too strong. The stroke he dealt, I have heard, would ruin it. He could reap no advantage.
Then the bane of that people, the fire-breathing dragon, was mad to attack for a third time. When a chance came, he caught the hero in a rush of flame and clamped sharp fangs into his neck. Beowulf's body ran wet with his lifeblood. It came welling out. Next thing they say, the noble son of Weohstan saw the king in danger at his side and displayed his inborn bravery and strength. He left the head alone, but his fighting hand was burned when he came to his kinsman's aid. He lunged at the enemy lower down so that his decorated sword sank into its belly and the flames grew weaker. Once again the king gathered his strength and drew a stabbing knife he carried on his belt, sharpened for battle. He stuck it deep into the dragon's flank. Beowulf dealt it a deadly wound. They had killed the enemy. Courage quelled his life. That pair of kinsmen, partners in nobility, had destroyed the foe. So every man should act, be at hand when needed. But now, for the king, this would be the last of his many labors and triumphs in the world.
Then the wound dealt by the ground burner earlier began to scald and swell. Beowulf discovered deadly poison suppurating inside him, surges of nausea, and so in his wisdom the prince realized his state and struggled toward a seat on the rampart. He steadied his gaze on those gigantic stones, saw how the earthwork was braced with arches built over columns. And now that Thane, unequaled for goodness, with his own hands washed his lord's wounds, swabbed the weary prince with water, bathed him clean, unbuckled his helmet. Beowulf spoke. In spite of his wounds, mortal wounds, he still spoke, for he well knew his days in the world had been lived out to the end. His allotted time was drawing to a close. Death was very near.
Now is the time when I would have wanted to bestow this armor on my own son, had it been my fortune to have fathered an heir and live on in his flesh. For 50 years I ruled this nation. No king of any neighboring clan would dare face me with troops. None had the power to intimidate me. I took what came, cared for and stood by things in my keeping, never fomented quarrels, never swore to a lie. All this consoles me. Doomed as I am and sickening for death because of my right ways, the ruler of mankind need never blame me when the breath leaves my body for murder of kinsmen. Go now quickly, dearest Wiglaf. Under the gray stone where the dragon is laid out, lost to his treasure, hurry to feast your eyes on the hoard. Away you go. I want to examine that ancient gold, gaze my fill on these garnered jewels. My going will be easier for having seen the treasure, a less troubled letting go of the life and lordship I have long maintained.
And so I have heard the son of Weohstan quickly obeyed the command of his languishing, war-weary lord. He went in his chainmail under the rock-piled roof of the barrow, exulting in his triumph, and saw beyond the sea a treasure trove of astonishing richness. Wall hangings that were a wonder to behold, glittering gold spread across the ground, the old dawn scorching serpent's den, packed with goblets and vessels from the past, tarnished and corroding, rusty helmets all eaten away, armbands everywhere artfully wrought. How easily treasure buried in the ground, gold hidden however skillfully can escape from any man. And he saw too a standard entirely of gold, hanging high over the hoard, a masterpiece of filigree. It glowed with light, so he could make out the ground at his feet and inspect the valuables. Of the dragon there was no remaining sign. The sword had dispatched him. Then the story goes, a certain man plundered the hoard in that immemorial how, filled his arms with flagons and plates, anything he wanted, and took the standard also, most brilliant of banners. Already the blade of the old king's sharp killing sword had done its worst. The one who had for long minded the hoard, however, hovering over gold, unleashing fire, surging forth midnight after midnight, had been mown down.
Wiglaf went quickly, keen to get back. Excited by the treasure, anxiety weighed on his brave heart. He was hoping he would find the leader of the Geats alive where he had left him, helpless, earlier on the open ground. So he came to the place, carrying the treasure, and found his lord bleeding profusely, his life at the end. Again he began to swab his body. The beginnings of utterance broke out from the king's breast cage. The old lord gazed sadly at the gold. To the everlasting Lord of all, to the King of glory, I give thanks, and I behold the treasure here in front of me, and I have been allowed to leave my people, so well endowed on the day I die. Now that I have bartered my last breath to own this fortune, it is up to you to look after their needs. I can hold out no longer. Order my troop to construct a barrow on a headland on the coast after my pyre has cooled. It will loom on the horizon of Horones, and be a reminder among my people. So in coming times, crews under sail will call it Beowulf's Barrow, as they steer ships across the wide and shrouded waters.
Then the king, in his great-heartedness, unclasped the collar of gold from his neck and gave it to the young thane, telling him to use it and the war shirt and the gilded helmet well. You are the last of us, the only one left of the Waymundings. Fate swept us away, sent my whole brave high-born clan to their final doom. Now I must follow them. That was the warrior's last word. He had no more to confide. The furious heat of the pyre would assail him. His soul fled from his breast to its destined place among the steadfast ones.
It was hard then on the young hero, having to watch the one he held so dear there on the ground, going through his death agony. The dragon from under earth, his nightmarish destroyer, lay destroyed as well, utterly without life. No longer would his snake folds ply themselves to safeguard hidden gold. Hard-edged blades hammered out and keenly filed had finished him, so that the sky roamer lay there rigid, brought low beside the treasure lodge. Never again would he glitter and glide and show himself off in midnight air, exulting in his riches. He fell to earth through the battle strength in Beowulf's arm. There were few indeed, as far as I have heard, big and brave as they may have been, few who would have held out if they had had to face the outpourings of that poison breather, or gone foraging on the ring hall floor and found the deep barrow dweller on guard and awake. The treasure had been won, bought and paid for by Beowulf's death. Both had reached the end of the road through the life they had been lent. Before long, the battle dodgers abandoned the wood, the ones who had let down their lord earlier, the tail-turners, 10 of them together. When he needed them most, they had made off. Now they were ashamed and came behind shields in their battle outfits to where the old man lay. They watched Wiglaf, sitting worn out, a comrade shoulder to shoulder with his lord, trying in vain to bring him round with water. Much as he wanted to, there was no way he could preserve his lord's life on earth, or alter in the least the Almighty's will. What God judged right would rule what happened to every man, as it does this day. Then a stern rebuke was bound to come from the young warrior to the ones who had been cowards. Wiglaf, son of Weohstan, spoke disdainfully and in disappointment. Anyone ready to admit the truth will surely realize that the Lord of men who showered you with gifts and gave you the armor you're standing in, when he would distribute helmets and mail shirts to men on the mead benches, a prince treating his thanes in hall to best he could find far or near, was throwing weapons uselessly away. It would be a sad waste when the war broke out. Beowulf had little cause to brag about his armed guard, yet God who ordains who wins or loses allowed him to strike with his own blade when bravery was needed.
There was little I could do to protect his life in the heat of the fray. Yet I found new strength welling up when I went to help him. Then my sword connected, and the deadly assaults of our foe grew weaker. The fire coursed less strongly from his head. But when the worst happened, too few rallied around the prince. So it is goodbye now to all of you and love on your home ground, the open-handedness, the giving of war swords, every one of you with freeholds of land. Our whole nation will be dispossessed once princes from beyond get tidings of how you turned and fled and disgraced yourselves. A warrior will sooner die than live a life of shame